Dan. I just wanted to say thank you for all the questions that I've been able to look at and research. If anything, the biggest problem is figuring out which ones to answer first because there's a lot of really good ones. So thank you. Keep the questions coming. They're very, very valuable, and we will continue to address the different issues that we see. One of the most common questions that has been coming up, or common questions, plural, has to do with the new food sensitivity lists. And everybody is really excited about the fact that they have this new greatly expanded list in their mobile scanner. However, there have been different questions that have come up with it. Some of the questions were, why are the foods that are good for me coming up as something that I'm sensitive to? How come the foods that I eat all the time that don't seem to cause me any problems that I can see are coming up all the time in the sensitivity list? And how come foods I've never eaten at all are coming up in the food sensitivity list? So there's been questions about them. I've seen a few comments saying, oh, the scanner must just not be accurate and I'm just going to keep eating it and whatever. So it just really seemed like those questions were good to be addressed. So let's start out first with one of the possibilities, and that is that you could have a compromised gut. Okay, the gut has just got many layers to it. There's many things involved with it. There can be many things that actually are causing different foods to show up in the sensitivity list. And I think it's important to remember that on a call a couple of weeks ago, Lauren and Shelby were talking about different food things, and it was stressed that it's not saying that there's a food allergy, it's a food sensitivity. And one of the things to remember first off is that it's frequencies again, okay? So the gut can have a lot of different things going on. There can be microscopic holes which are starting to develop. And in that case, as the gut progressively gets these little holes in it, known as leaky gut, then you have more and more particles of food that are ending up where they don't belong, which will then set up an autoimmune response, or a tagging, if you will, of these foods as being problematic. So it could be that somebody is starting to show sensitivities because they're right frequency-wise at the beginning of having a compromise of the gut lining. They could have had years of having to start to have problems with the villi, starting to have the junctures loosen, starting to get it where there's just aggravation of the actual wall of the lining. And now it's showing up frequency-wise that some of these foods are actually ending up in the bloodstream and where they don't belong. Secondly, why does a food show up one day and not the next day, and then show up the day after again and not the next day? If somebody's eating something like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it shows up on Tuesday, it shows up on Thursday, it doesn't show up on Monday, it doesn't show up on Wednesday. Well, here again, there could be specific reasons. There are many things that can compromise the gut from day to day that are of an external nature, other than just the food itself. For example, somebody could be having something going on with the gut because of having to take aspirin or ibuprofen the day before. The stress can have a phenomenal effect on the gut, where foods on Monday, where somebody was just having a normal day, the reaction in the body to the stressful situation the next day ends up tagging the food as being a sensitivity because it wasn't breaking down properly. It was eaten in a hurry. It wasn't chewed enough. There weren't enough enzymes. There wasn't enough acid. Could be any number of different reasons why it shows up. Another thing could be dehydration. If a person is dehydrated, that can affect the gut and the way that the foods are utilized and broken down as well. There could be exposure to mold or fungus. Produce can have mold and fungus on it. And so because the mold or fungus was present on the food is coming up as having a sensitivity to it in connection with the mold and fungus. There could be candida that is starting to multiply in the body. And if the person is eating foods that are contributing to the growth of that candida, then the brain can start to flag those as having a sensitivity, not so much that the food itself is a problem as the component of it, sugar-wise, that could be encouraging an overgrowth of candida in the body. There also could be exposure to toxins. And I found it interesting because Shelby was talking about having gone to Maine, and she had lobster a few days in a row, and all of a sudden it showed up on her scanner. And I got to thinking about it, and there could be a lot of reasons why she came up for having an issue with lobster after those few days. And Lauren addressed it by saying, the sensitivity, having it a few days in a row. Well, it's not like Shelby's eating lobster normally 3 days a week, for the last months. This was a new thing. Now think what could be involved with having had lobster a few days in a row. And I'm just going to list a couple of things. Lobster typically is a rich food, okay? And you generally dip it in a lot of butter. So one thing that could have happened could have been that Shelby's system wasn't used to having something with that much fat in it. And so it could have caused an issue with the gallbladder. There could have been where there wasn't enough lipase to break down the fat in the body. And so she would have had the brain tag it as a sensitivity after a few days because frequency-wise, it was starting to cause a problem with the gallbladder, with the liver, just in general because of the fattiness and the richness of it. Another possibility is that lobsters are typically bottom feeders. And so even from one lobster to the next, there can be a different reaction frequency-wise with the body, because if one lobster was in an area where it was eating toxins that would cause a response in Shelby's body, and then the next day she had one that was cleaner, over a few days, the brain could get where it starts going, wow, we're seeing some frequencies for toxins in this food that she's eating, so we're going to register it as a sensitivity. So that's just a couple of the issues that there could be, for example, in Shelby's case, when she was eating lobster. Now, if she didn't have lobster for another year and she went back, maybe she could take a little bit more enzymes in order to break down the fat. Maybe the lobsters would come from an area that didn't have quite as much pollution as far as bottom feeders, and she might not show as having any sensitivity develop over 3 days at all. So there's another example of how there can be a lot of components that are involved with the foods that somebody's eating, why the brain would start registering frequencies for sensitivity. She's not allergic to lobster. She just had a sensitivity to 1, 2, 3, maybe more components of having eaten an unfamiliar food, not a daily food, a number of days in a row with a possible number of components. The other thing is that she could have eaten the lobster and had it with a baked potato with butter and sour cream. Typical in Maine, when I go to Portland and a friend of mine takes me out for lobster, it's baked potato, corn on the cob, lobster, butter, sour cream. Not something that you eat all the time either. So it even could have been an interreaction of different foods that made it where the brain picked out the main component being the lobster. A lot of possibilities. And the reason I'm giving this to you is because on a day-to-day basis, all of you are going to have a lot of different components like that can be energetically, frequency-wise, tying into why foods disappear and show up day-to-day in your mobile scanner. So another thing could be an exposure to E. coli. Could have E. coli that was on some food, and immediately the brain has a frequency reaction to the food that was eaten. And then another thing could be emotions. Remember Lauren speaking at Day of Discovery and other times about that there really is the feeling that there's a lot of emotion involved with food anymore. And if you think about it, that makes so much sense. Think about when somebody is upset. A lot of times there are comfort foods that go along with that being upset, like from childhood. Maybe somebody's grandmother used to always make fresh baked sugar cookies when they were upset. And so the person emotionally, when they're having an upsetting situation, goes for the comfort food, but the comfort food has things in it where the brain immediately starts to put up a stop sign because it realizes that the frequencies of what's in that food in reaction to the emotions isn't great for the person to be eating. least not a lot of. Foods that have never been eaten. If you've never eaten a food and it's coming up in your scanner, what is the possibility there? It could be the closest frequency pattern to something that you ate that's in the database. Remember, even with the expanded list, it still does not have every food in it that is the possibility of being eaten. So you may have a food coming up that you've never eaten because the brain looks at the frequency of it, and the closest thing it can pick up is what shows up in your mobile scanner. The other possibility is that the brain could see that a frequency for a food that's very close to what you have eaten, if you eat it, it's going to be problematic. So it can be just giving you a heads up to foods that could be possibly become a problem if you ate them. So here again, because it's not diagnostic and it's dealing with frequencies, there's a lot of things that can show up in your scanner that are clues for you. Maybe you're needing more nutrients. If you're somebody that's just a meat and potatoes person, constantly eating the same foods over and over again, maybe you don't like vegetables, don't eat a lot of fruits, have a steady diet for years. I know coming from New England, that's all New England ever was meat, potatoes, and a little teeny bit of a vegetable as a side thing, but doesn't necessarily take care of all the nutrient needs of the body. So it could be that the brain is registering that there needs to be more of a variety in the diet. So it's complaining frequency-wise about what somebody's eating day after day after day in order to help them start to look at expanding their diet to have more minerals and more nutrients. So what's a person to do? Well, if you start off and recognize that for a lot of people, there are main offenders frequency-wise, even if they haven't gotten to the point where they're actually allergic to them yet, when they come up as an irritation or a sensitivity, a lot of times it's gluten, dairy, sugar, corn, and soy. Those are kind of 5 big bad boys that a lot of people will have sensitivity to, and that can lead to problems in the body if they keep consuming them. Another issue could be that maybe somebody needs to try to eat more organic. Maybe they're picking up too many pesticides off of the foods that they're eating. And so you can start to look in your mobile scanner and see if pesticides are starting to show up as an issue, where it may not just be the food itself, but what it's laden with as far as being toxic to the body. Another thing that could be is that you need to reduce stress on the body, or maybe the body needs more exercise, or to hydrate more, or to meditate more in order to get it where the emotions are better taken care of so that the body can digest better. When it digests better, you don't have things rotting and fermenting in the intestines, in the small intestine, where it would actually show up as being a toxin to the body, when it's not really the food that's the problem, it's the way that it's being handled by the body. So what can you use in your scanner? First of all, inner voice. Inner voice is always the first go-to part of your mobile scanner, because when you look at your inner voice, you're going to see suggestions on what should or shouldn't be eaten. You're going to see what emotions are causing problems in the body that could be relating directly to digestion and having it be where the body is not breaking down foods properly. Your body systems is another great tool with this, because in body systems, you're going to have different things mentioned as far as what's out of balance, what needs to be taken. If a lot of times it'll make notations on if there's dehydration, if there's more need for acid, if there's more need for enzymes, if there's a B vitamin deficiency. The different suggestions in body systems is really, really helpful as far as starting to track down why certain foods may be listed as sensitivity because of what's going on inside the body. Sometimes it's chiropractic that's needed. If you look at your reports and you see that chiropractic is needed in conjunction with the different vertebrae that are associated with the digestive organs, then a lot of times chiropractic can help as well. One of the first places that the vagus nerve affects is the stomach. So here again, chiropractic can be really valuable. In vitals, you have a lot of information in vitals on whether enzymes are needed, if there's frequencies indicating the possibility of elevated cortisol from stress, which would be affecting the digestion as well, which would then also interfere with how the foods were perceived by the brain due to whether they're breaking down, not breaking down, if there's enough nutrients, if there were pesticides, if there were toxins, all the things that we talked about previously. In comprehensive, you've got a lot of things listed. If you've got the reports from after phase 2, you've got a lot of things listed as far as molds and funguses like aspergillus and different things that are associated with produce needing to be cleaned better. This can affect the digestion as well. And then looking in the reports and seeing what emotions are associated with what body parts. Because if it's an emotion that's associated with the stomach, or if it's an emotion that says that it's associated with the large intestine, or the duodenum, or the liver, anything that has to do with the gallbladder, work on the emotion, because what's happening is the brain's picking it out because that emotion is affecting that organ, and that organ affects the digestion. And then the foods start to show up as having a sensitivity issue, where if you back it up and support the organs and work on the emotions, then you will start to see results in your reports as far as the digestion. Chakras and meridians are always to be considered. They have a lot to do with the flow of energy in the body, and this can have a major impact on digestion and what foods start to show up as being sensitive or not sensitive. So here again, look at your reports. Are they showing the need for minerals, Solex Gold? Are they showing the need for some nutrients that are in prime? You're going to get a lot of information from your reports that are going to show, like I just mentioned, if there's the need for Solex Gold, for prime, for think, for the omegas, everything that supports the gut-brain connection, so that these things are breaking down properly, so that the emotions aren't having as big an impact on the body. And then use it in connection with your inner voice, everything that supports the emotions. You know, it really goes back to the problem that if you view sensitivities as diagnostic, you're going to have a problem. You have to view sensitivities as something that helps you use the knowledge and the understanding from your mobile scanner, and just view it for what it is. It's the ebbs and flows of frequency, the ebb and flow of frequency. Remember what Einstein said, you have the energy, you have the particles. And so this is what you're seeing with all of the things that are showing up with food sensitivities. You can from day to day see a major shift in the frequencies that show up for food sensitivities due to all the things that we've talked about. It is not saying you have an allergy to this or this. It's just showing you what you need to work on. And then it's what you do with what you work on that'll make it where some of those things start to disappear and not show up anymore as frequencies. So checking all these things and connecting all the dots between all the information that you have is really going to help you understand why the food sensitivities are showing up the way that they are. So I hope that this has helped you. I hope you understand a little bit better the shift from day to day with the different foods and why they appear, why they don't appear, ones you've eaten, ones you haven't eaten, and just dig into your scanner. And once again, you will be seeing progress in your reports because of paying attention to the ebb and the flow of the frequencies. So until next time, we love scanning. Enjoy your scanning.